where I would be like in synagogue or something, and I'd think of a melody, but I had no way to record it because we didn't use any recording devices or anything like that. So I would just have to like sing it in my head over and over, like until Saturday night when I could record it.
Wow.
And so I think I do feel like that's a very formative part of the way I think about music is with voice.
This is our friend Yoshie Fruchter. Yoshie is a multi-strings instrumentalist and a composer and songwriter and singer. He started his musical journey playing traditional Jewish cantorial music with his father. So he was probably playing gigs before most of us knew what that meant. Here he is dipping his toes in my world, the realm of wind. Yeah, it's not for everybody, but thank you so much for sending us this photo. Now see, that just feels better. Strings is your thing, man. Also, I don't know who she is, but she should teach classes on whatever it is she's doing there, because it's perfect. Yoshie formed the group SANDCATCHERS with Mike Friedman, Michael Bates, and Tim Kuiper. SANDCATCHERS is a folky yet highly creative contemporary group that can be found playing all over Brooklyn. They have a few records out, so check them out. He's also in Kat TOREN's band, Kat TOREN's Humankind, which is led by Kat TOREN. Yoshie is one of those highly devoted, incredibly skilled, yet humble and down-to-earth musicians that not only makes you feel good to play with, but also just makes you feel better about life. Which is why we're happy to have him performing and talking with us today on... All right, Yoshie Fruchter, welcome to the show. Good to have you. I'm introduced to you because of Kat. You played in her band Humankind, right? You guys want to talk about that for a second? What that project is?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I invited Yoshie to be a part of a quintet that I started, and well, the first album we recorded and donated proceeds to the ACLU. That was basically the purpose of the group, but I just thought that the music was well received and I loved the group. And so we recently released our second album, Scintillating Beauty.
And I had a lot of fun, and I've been having a lot of fun playing in that group because I'm a guitar player, but also an oud player. And specifically for this group, Kat wanted me to play the oud. And it was really... it was music that I hadn't attempted to use that instrument in, or a style of music, and it was a really fun challenge.
How do you know how to do that? Like when you approach, it's I don't know. Would you call this jazz music? I'm not.
Yeah,
sure.
no,
Okay.
I would. Yeah.
It sounds like it's kind of Alice Coltrane based. When you do that, how do you know if it's right? How do you know if it's is it just a feeling, or is there a method to this kind of thing?
I still don't, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, part of my journey with just studying that instrument and studying the music, maqam, which is the music of Middle Eastern culture. Specifically, I've studied some Turkish music, but there's a lot of sort of, in the recent years, like we all know, we were talking earlier, just about bridging musical cultures and how to do that properly and respectfully, and it's such a fine line, and honestly, yeah, like I still don't know. What I do know is that I love the instrument and I love the music that Kat's playing, and so I think that Kat's composing, and so I think that that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
And like we all know, we talk about music as a vehicle for love, and how that's the most important sort of driver for music, and so I think it's just it. At a certain point, it's just going to come out, I think. But that being said, it's still a challenge. Like there's certain traditional things that go with an instrument, and there's certain ways that you want to expand upon that. And so.
Yeah.
So you think I should sound more like David Sanborn?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going
aspect
for.
of my instrument.
I remember asking you to double some chords with me.
Right.
And they were like pretty regular Western music chords, and we really had to figure out what was going to sound best and how you're going to voice them. And would you say that was a bit of a challenge, or?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's not, the music, Middle Eastern music is generally not a chordal music. It's modal, so that instrument is not meant to have chords played on it. Um, you know, I study with, it's been a while now, but I study with a great oud player named Ara Dinkjian, who's Armenian, and he's come up with some cool ways to play chords, chordish things on the instrument. But yeah, it's really, like I feel like there's ways to kind of use it use it as a chordal instrument if you want to, but it's not really meant to do that. So it's,
Well, the reason I thought of it, I was like, wow, this would sound great if Yoshie doubled me, was because on the previous album you had improvised something, and in the middle of it you just went bring, and it was gorgeous. So I thought I'd like to use a little bit more of that sound.
It's very satisfying. It's this very cool combination of timbres, that kind of have like some guitar, some kind of, mandolin, bouzouki, kind of just all these different stringed instruments like rolled into one.
With SANDCATCHERS, would you say you lean more traditional, or is it pretty experimental too?
I'm not really trying to be a virtuoso on the instrument. It's not something that, like, I just love the sound of it, and I love the music that's played on it, and I love the history of it. So what I'm sort of trying to do is take the things that I learn and that I can learn and sort of, I guess, make them my own in a certain way, and use them in a way that works with the music that I make and that I write. So that includes like maybe using sort of elements of a certain traditional piece, like a rhythm or a melody or a line or a note or something, or a vibe, and putting it, sort of writing a song based on that.
I wanted to ask, I was listening to a lot of your music this week, and I wanted to ask how you make a stringed instrument sing in the way that you do. With the saxophone, that's what I'm thinking about a lot. And it makes sense, but you're playing kind of a percussive instrument when you play a stringed instrument. So what is the thoughts on how to, maybe you don't think about it, it's just natural.
Right.
What do you think?
That's a really good question. So I grew up like observant Jewish. So, on Friday night and Saturday, we wouldn't use any instruments or anything. So there was a lot of singing during that time. And so a lot of like traditional Jewish song. And so I always remember like as I got older, and I started to like write a little bit more and just like thinking of songs, there would be that period where I would be like in synagogue or something and I'd think of a melody, but I had no way to record it because we didn't use any recording devices or anything like that. So I would just have to like sing it in my head over and over, like until Saturday night when I could record it.
Wow.
And so I think I do feel like that's a very formative part of the way I think about music is with voice. And as far as the instrument, I don't know. There's so many things that go into it. I feel like each of us with our instrument, it's about breath. It's there's the whole thing where I remember, when you heard George Benson for the first time singing his guitar solos, and you're just like that's a way to approach it.
He's hearing what he's playing.
Right.
He's singing what he's playing. Yeah.
Right.
I think even then, though, I hear guitar players who can sing along with themselves or piano players, and it still doesn't sound like the instruments bringing that kind of life that a singer would have. It's got to be the first thing we did in music as humans was singing. I was reading something that you said or listening in an interview about how melody drives everything. And so I was going to ask about melody. Like, when you say it drives everything, what do you mean by that?
I guess without knowing exactly like what the context was that when I said it, but like
Everything I do starts with melody.
Okay. Like I don't want things to get too complicated, at least from the beginning. I want something, and this goes back to the sort of singing something in my head. It's like if I were doing that, I'm not, I'm no genius. Like I'm not gonna like Mozart a thing and then like write it down. So
Right.
for me, it's like what can I remember? What is going to stick in my head?
Right.
And so I think that's what I mean is that when I'm writing music, it's like I'm trying to think of something. It is sort of like writing a hook, for like a pop song, I guess.
Sure.
Not that I write specifically pop music, but like, it's just starting with something very simple that can, that can stick in your head in some way. It can be a rhythm. Again, it can be a theme. It can be something that will just sort of be an anchor.
Well, I think about melody a lot that, I'm never going to remember a form the way that I do. I could sing Jurassic Park, the first 3 notes, and we would all know it. So it's such an intimate thing, melody, that like somebody can give that to you, John Williams in this case, and you have it for the rest of your life. Not only do you have it, but it kind of grows in you a bit. I don't want to get Freudian here, but like it's very intimate that these few simple notes can stick with you forever. People say they get it in their head and they can't even get it out. You might go to a club and there's boom-ch, boom-ch, dance music. You might have it in your head when you come home, but it's not the same as 13 years later you remember that melody in that way. So do you find that like when you're writing this kind of music that you're trying to be intimate, or is it maybe an unconscious attempt to
No, I think I think it's both. I think it becomes like unconscious, but I think it's an attempt to make something that's inviting to a listener, and that's not to say that I haven't over the years like wanted to do things that were challenging too, I certainly
but the
like
scene these days, it seems like a lot of people write, I'm not trying to get dark, but
Yeah.
it seems like they write a lot of music on Sibelius or Finale, and it starts with like the theory works. I can write it. I can write these lines, and that's not as vulnerable, I think, as here is this melody that you could sing. And I'm a trained, educated musician, but that's what I'm going to write for you. For me, that I don't know. It just really moved me listening to your music.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting at. It's like, like I'm all about sort of complex music, and I'm all about different ways. But I think that you can do complex music that still has that. And in my case, like I've sort of taken it.
Humankind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just like yeah, and I was hearing that on your record too, like the these no, absolutely.
Please, tell
like
me
these,
more, please.
Yeah, no, these little like snippets of melody that just like that you can hang out with. It's literally like having a friend in in the music for that
like
moment.
Yeah,
It's just
I
like
like that too.
The oud, for anybody that doesn't know, is what, thousands of years old.
Yeah.
And it exists across a lot of different cultures.
Yes.
Do you see this, and you're talking about doing modern things with it, and approaching tradition but not being stuck to it, and all of that. Do you see the oud as kind of a common thread of some different cultures? I mean, I guess I'm thinking, back in times before technology, it must have been wild to see people play the same instrument but sound different. Or maybe they would have common things and say, oh, that's what we do too.
Yeah.
But you do this differently. Like, what do you think is the significance there in hearing somebody from Turkey hearing something from,
Yeah.
somewhere
Well,
else?
it's interesting. Like one thing I love about it is, so part of the music of Makam is like, there's certain notes that are not, between the black and the white keys, like they're, microtonal, and there has been over the last century or so, I think, it's been codified, and you can get books that show you how many cents, sharp this note is supposed to be and how many whatever. But when it comes down to it, it really, like, depending on which country you're in and even like which like village you're in, your semitone is going to be a little sharper and a little flatter, and that that exists on a larger scale too. So like, in Turkey, it like might be, the E might be a little on the sharper side. And then
that made me feel a little more comfortable with my quarter tones, because I'm like, oh, some of them do it a little different. I don't have to be, I can say, oh, that was the Turkish quarter tone rather than the Persian quarter tone.
And it's like
bullshitting, but like at least, I have a little leeway.
But it's like, it goes even, right, it's even deeper than that, because it's like each individual musician has like a certain way that they'll do it. And it's like really, there is a lot of correlation with, I think, like the blues and the blue note and that kind of thing. And it's like, we're not, we're not going to like muddy waters and like trying to write
exactly
when he bends that, like, is it how many cents is he going up? It's just
a
like
feeling.
It's a note. It's
By any chance, do you have any stories about, say, Elvis Presley?
Oh, so you've really been down the rabbit hole.
I've been stalking you for a week.
Oh yeah.
Not a professional interviewer, so I do my homework. This does segue into something a little more.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
No, we do have a cool story connection with Elvis Presley, which is that my grandfather was a rabbi, and I believe his first rabbi gig was in Memphis, Tennessee. Their house that they lived in was a 2-level house, and upstairs was Elvis Presley's family, and downstairs was my grandparents. His mom Gladys and my grandmother were like best buds, and they would like have coffee together. And she bought him, my grandmother bought Elvis cufflinks for his prom.
I thought you were gonna say blue suede shoes.
Yeah. I was telling you about like Sabbath and using electricity, and how I grew up not doing those things from Friday night to Saturday night. You don't turn on lights, you don't turn on the oven, all this stuff. So but there's a weird sort of like loophole that if you can actually have someone who's like not Jewish do those things for you, which I think is kind of insane. But so like there were times when like Elvis would like turn on the lights in their apartment if they like left them off or whatever, and so so that kind of thing. So
out there.
And we have one picture of Elvis as a teenager with my aunt and uncle as toddlers, and it's like that's the one sort of piece of proof that we have that ever happened.
And so, is there anything like musically involved with this Elvis story?
So
before we move on, quickly.
So what I was going to say is that when he did make his first record when he was still living there, but they were still really poor at the time and couldn't afford a record player, so they borrowed my grandparents' record player, which was basically only used for playing cantorial music, and played. That's where my grandparents were going away for the summer, so they used the record player for the whole summer. And
Did
played
your grandparents host Shabbat at the house?
Did they what?
Did they do the Friday night?
Did they do it at the house? Sure. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Probably.
I mean, well, the other thing is that
probably they're hearing some melodies, Elvis, right?
Yeah, okay. And the other thing is that, like I said, he was playing cantorial music.
Yeah.
And so they, I like to think that it, maybe he was hearing some of that stuff.
The influence.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that your father is a musician. He plays klezmer music.
Sort of. He plays Jewish music.
Mm-hmm.
There's sort of. It's probably too long to go into now, but like klezmer has like a certain specific roots in in Eastern Europe, and but for all intents and purposes, it's klezmer Jewish music. Yeah.
Was he a gigger?
He still is.
Okay.
Oh,
still
great.
Is a gigger. I got my first gigs were in his wedding band when I was like 18 years old. So I was like, everyone else was doing this sort of like dirty clubs. I was playing the, whatever, the Crystal Palace or whatever, like
That's great.
Washington D.C.
Yeah, what I was curious about was how that experience playing with your father was for you, and if you had thoughts about passing that on to your children also.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think that's, we were talking about sort of tradition and traditional music. I mean, I think that's so important, whatever it is, whatever your tradition is, to have something that you can communicate and relate to your children on. In my case, it was this sort of, Jewish ritual and the music that went along with that. And I think that informs everything I do, whether the music I'm playing or writing is explicitly Jewish or not. So I think that any kind of tradition and it doesn't even have to be an existing one, but it can be one that you create. But I think it's so important for just raising the next generation with a love of something and a connection to something,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, I disagree. I'm just
yeah.
as a teacher
That's
of 650 kids, No,
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. No, exactly.
I love it. It's like these songs have been passed down as long as anyone can remember, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a really special gift to like be able to have that sort of relationship with family and with a connection to something else.
Coming at it a little bit more from like the artist's perspective, my favorite quote about this was Jimi Hendrix, which I don't even know if this is true, but what I was told by a professor is that he said that the blues were like the earth, and the psychedelic sounds that were new at the time, like all wah-wah pedals and distortion, was like the cosmos, and that he was like the tree between the two. So to think about keeping grounded, by something that you came up with. Okay, so it's time for our special segment. This is called Wish I'd Known Then.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a chance where you get to tell yourself in the past what you wish you had known, or anyone who's listening who might want to know anything. Something you wish you had known. It could be about music. Obviously, we think about music all the time, but it doesn't have to be. It could be about life, or dealing with people, or whatnot.
Yeah. Just the idea of sort of committing to something. And it's not that I would necessarily change the way that I've approached things, because over the years I have sort of like dabbled in a bunch of different things. And I am happy that I have, because I've learned a lot. But there's also part of me that sometimes is like, oh, if I had really like, committed to like this thing, like that would be.
We always talk about
You guys talk about this?
Yes.
And it's like, because I look at like the real virtuosos of like and I'm like, well, if I had like really, if I had picked up like the mandolin and I had just been like, I'm gonna like play mandolin all day long, and like that's gonna be like the
this
thing.
is so funny. We were just talking.
Yeah,
about
we talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, I think that's the thing that I don't know that I wish I would have done that, because as I said, like I'm okay with, I'm turning 40 this year. I'm like starting to come to the point where I'm just like, it is what it is. But being able to have the perspective of like, like just the security of like being who I am
Yes.
as a musician, as opposed to just being like, oh, like I wish this, I should have done this, I should have done that.
Yeah, but you're a curious person.
Exactly.
Just like me as well. Just, oh, what's this like? And I want to try this.
Right.
And then you have so many experiences.
Right.
That's just what I tell myself.
Right.
But,
No, I love it. It's helpful.
We all let ourselves off that way.
Yeah, it's helpful to talk to people who and like understand that it's, it's,
What do you think has over the years, we're all not super young. So what do you think has stuck, and what has kind of your perspective on music, what has stuck and what has kind of fallen away as, not quite as important as you thought it might have been?
certainly like the sort of more ambitious things, and when it comes to sort of like business elements of music, that's not really. I sort of came to realize about myself that that's not who I am. You know, I like we all have our own relationship to that part of music, and
Yeah, well, not all of us.
right. But it's like, we all have friends who have started record labels
Sure.
and
Yeah.
done things like this, and it's amazing because that's how everything is keeps going.
Although you do have a series. It's pretty
I,
great.
this year, I have like a space where I can
Yeah.
do music, sure, but
Yeah.
but I think I realized that I think like there's certain, like, the music in some ways is going to be enough, regardless of where, obviously we have to make a living and things like that, but I try and measure my ambition for doing things that that gain me like acclaim or quote exposure,
Sure.
like with just like
Your brand.
with the brand,
Yeah.
with just like being able to sort of make music and leave. I've thought, I was talking to somebody about this, the idea of just like leaving a document, because when you really start to think about, like, and not to get too deep or whatever, but when you think about like your mortality and things like that, like, what is it that's going to be left, like a document of, like, you will leave some collection of items, you will leave some collection of family, and then you're going to leave a document of your art. And so I just sort of started thinking about it more like that, where it's like, whatever I make is going to gain me what it gains me. But when it comes down to it, I need to think about it as like, just, this is part of a document of like who I am.
All right.
These things.
Our feature venue today is IBEAM Brooklyn, which is not a construction supply company, but a performance venue in Gowanus, Brooklyn. IBEAM was formed as a collective of musicians who pay membership dues to keep the lights on, so they can do whatever they want, and they only book the kind of music that fits their mission statement. IBEAM is a converted garage square box room, and everything's modular, so the music can be presented in different ways for different shows, giving the audience completely different kinds of experiences that match the music. The room sounds great. It's run by professional musicians, and it's just a hip, in-the-know kind of joint. So come to IBEAM, support musicians, and support local venues. You won't be disappointed.